Hey everyone, welcome to season 2 of the Refuse Ordinary podcast. Today I have some very special guests on the podcast. I have Michelle Carr. She recently graduated level 4 of the School of Transformation and is now on staff, and she does all kinds of cool things with events at the Father's House Church and tons of things. So it's amazing. She's amazing. And we have Maria McWhorter. She's the director of the School of Transformation, which is awesome. And so welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
So today we're going to talk about a bit about Michelle's testimony. So she recently shared her story, a bit of her story, on a testimony video. And it was really cool. It was about how you were pursuing a degree. Is that the right word? Degree in psychology.
Yes.
And kind of on track to be very successful and earn a lot of money and help a lot of people and really cool things, right? But there was this emptiness that came with it, and you're feeling pretty lost on what you're actually doing. And fast forward, you came here, and you've been equipped through your time here and have been doing a lot of really amazing things. Like you were able to be a house leader and mentor for girls in recovery, and using those giftings and stuff, and just finding fulfillment in his plans for your life.
Yeah.
So let's start off with talking about what actually brought you here, because you were in Toronto, right?
Yes.
Studying psychology, and suddenly you're in Oroville. So what was that? What happened there?
Yeah, so that's actually a pretty interesting story.
Okay.
So as you mentioned, I was on track to, I always did very well in school, right?
Yeah.
I always put in a lot of hard work, pulled all-nighters, all of that.
Yeah.
Because I knew, since I was in high school, actually, I wanted to be a counselor.
Yeah.
Right? So I was on track to go to master's and get a degree and education and hopefully have a really good career track.
Yeah.
And I got a job straight out of college, helping in an eating disorder clinic in Toronto, doing research studies for them.
Yeah.
So everything was going really well on the outside.
Yeah.
And I would always tell people, I want to study psychology because I want to help people.
Yeah.
All right. But deep down, especially at that time, there was actually a lot of ambition, like self-ambition, that wrapped around it.
Yeah.
Growing up, my family placed a lot of value in education and money and career.
Yeah.
So I grew up with that kind of expectations.
Yeah.
Right. So then, even though on the outside I would tell people, yeah, I just want to help people. Look what a good Christian I am. But deep down, I knew I actually want to open a very successful practice one day, just make money. And it's a lot of like, look at me, I'm successful, I'm good.
Yeah.
Right. So it was actually very self-serving, if I could be honest with myself.
Yeah.
And I think maybe because of that, I was actually very empty and I felt really lost on the inside.
Yeah.
I was struggling with depression and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And all the while looking like my life is super good on the outside, but deep down I just felt that emptiness,
Yeah.
And then one day Jesus pretty much spoke to me out of nowhere and said, hey, listen, your spirit is actually dying within you right now.
Wow.
Because for a while after college, I pretty much walked away from the Lord, just lived in sin and all of that, right?
Yeah.
And then he told me, your spirit is dying within you. And I actually would like you to pursue a ministry school.
Okay.
And, you have to go as if your life depended on it.
Wow.
And then, so that's how, I came here actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then through being here, you've been here for a few years now.
Yes.
Yeah. And what has been the change in you? Because now you're even if it's not always an official role, you're obviously very good at mentoring people, and you're put in positions to mentor people, and which is kind of maybe along the vein of things you were interested in before,
Right.
And so how is it different now? What has kind of caused that emptiness to be filled up, I mean, obviously Jesus, but what does that kind of look like in your journey here?
Right. I think the biggest thing was actually deciding to truly trust Jesus with my life and my future, right? So prior to coming here, it was very much of, this is what I want to do. Like I had plans for my life, you know, I planned out like a few years down the road, and I was on track to pursue that plan. But I never really involved Jesus in that planning. You know, it was never, Jesus, what do you want me to do? In fact, I very much was afraid to ask Jesus that question because I was so afraid he would tell me something different than what I truly wanted to do. Right? And then I also didn't really trust that my future would be good in Jesus' hand. So I felt like I have to keep it, you know, keep it within my own hand and within my own control. So coming to the school, it was a lot of like learning to trust Jesus, trust the people around me, and really deciding to surrender my life to him, you know, and in a very complete sense of, I'm going to surrender my future to you too. And I'm going to trust that you will have my best interests in mind, and that my future is so much better with you. So then that was a process of learning to walk with him. And eventually, as you mentioned, I was able to do house leading for ladies in recovery for a while. And it was really like a dream coming true to be able to mentor girls and just loving them back to life. And then even like other bits of things I do now. And then there's just so much fulfillment in my life. You know, it really replaced the emptiness. Because I know that right now I'm walking in the center of God's will. And just that alone brings so much satisfaction into my life. So that's been a really cool
Isn't
change.
that interesting? Like how, I mean, that's huge, like to actually decide to trust Jesus with your future, from going to, like, from coming from a place of like, I'm afraid to, if I'm honest, you know, to actually like, now you're listening to him and walking in his plans. And ironically, I guess that's actually what's fulfilling, you know? Maria, like with your story, I know you've loved Jesus your whole life, you know, and I've heard a little bit of like some of the places you've gone while following him, but what does that look like in your life of like listening to his plans and trusting him with what he's telling you to do, and even just like some of the things you've actually been able to do through that?
Well, for me, it's seeing God as a good father, and that he knows me better than I know myself. I think growing up, it was, I am the youngest of 6. So I actually thought my sisters had sucked the gene pool dry of all the gifts and talents. Was not as good as some of the things that they were. And so I identify with what Michelle's talking about, of just this want to help people. And the like curiosity of what could that possibly look like? What am I made for? And how does this translate? Growing up in church, it was, you hear a lot of good things that you're supposed to do,
right?
And it's the where do I fit in this grand plan of what God's doing? And so my best advice in that is to try different things. So those are some of those experiences that you were talking about, of where I was a camp counselor for kids of an area that was incredibly underprivileged. They didn't even have a local YMCA for the kids. And we did a sports camp for them for 6 weeks. A different sport each week. And I mean, well, I definitely don't look as athletic as I used to be, but you know, I was an asthmatic kid growing up. So sports was not the thing that you would think that I would gravitate towards, but I just felt like it was just, I knew inside myself that was something to give a go. And went to Pennsylvania. I'm Canadian, and so it was a long drive, and we just gave it a go, and I fell in love with it, of maybe kids is the spot for me, and the way that I can now put into action this love that I've experienced of Jesus. And then, through that, it led to outreaches and ministry trips and missionary trips to Greece and to England, and just getting to see the realness of the need in front of you. And the going, okay, what is it that I actually have to give? And it can get real practical. Just, you know, the things that God has placed inside of you, the world needs. And it doesn't have to be complicated, and it doesn't have to be left for someone else to do that you think can do it better, but it's actually just giving it just loving on people, letting his love go through you to other people. And I think that's where you find the greatest fulfillment, because you can see it in Michelle, the fulfillment of now doing what she's doing, and these things that come alive inside of us is because his love actually has a chance to get out to the people around us and impact the lives in such practical ways, in the giftings and the talents that he's placed inside of us that we might minimize.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, that, like, because sometimes that feeling of like, what's his call? It can feel very complicated.
Daunting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And like, even just that, like, is he gonna speak to me? Like, is a voice gonna come? You know, like there's a whole thing, or like, and so like, I mean, you kind of touched on this too, but like, what does that look like? Because I mean, that's been in my life too, a lot of like, how do I know his call? How do I know, you know? Yeah. And I put a lot of pressure on it, you know? And so how do you deal with that? You know, because you know, that will like really wanting to do his will, but feeling like
you don't know what it is.
No.
Yeah. That is a really good question. And I think it's something that hits us all on different levels, because we make him hard to understand.
Yeah.
And what I've experienced and found is that if my heart and intention is to be in the center of his will, he will make it very plain. Mm-hmm. He's in charge of the journey, and I just have to follow what's in front of me. Yeah. And so I feel like throughout each experience that I've done, it's led to the next one. Yeah. And so God is writing our story, and sometimes it takes us a minute to clue into what it is. Yeah. But it's the understanding that he is with you, and he is part of it, and his will is going to be accomplished in your life. And if you're not doing anything that's resisting it, but just going, okay, Jesus, what do you want me to do? Yeah. I think the willingness of a heart that is submitted to him, he can do so much with. And then you find yourself in places and with opportunities. I remember getting presented opportunities that probably would have never gotten if my attitude hadn't been that, and my willingness hadn't been that, to go, okay, God, whatever you want to do. Wow. And so then it was like, oh, do I go do this very risky thing that takes me completely out of my comfort zone, or do I just stay where I'm familiar? Yeah. And for me, it was let's try. Yeah. Let's try. And it's led me from one place to the next to being here. Yeah. And doing what I'm doing now, and getting this opportunity to then share that with other people, to inspire them to just not make it overcomplicated, but do what he has in front of them and trust him in the process, that he's going to lead you where you need to go. Yeah. I love that. Like that, do what's in front of you. Like that way simplifies it, you know, or like to where it's supposed to be. And he's called us to love the one in front of us, you know, and even like, I mean, like, it's also, there's a journey to it, you know, because if you would have been told 10 years ago that you were going to be the director of the school, right? It would have been like, right? I'm like, wow, I don't know, you bumped your head. But like, what you've done over the last, you know, it's equipped you, you know, to where it's like, of course, it's really good point. Of course you're the director, you know, you know, but it's like, it's been those like saying yes, right? Yeah. And I mean, even that, like, putting it into his hands, right? Because I mean, I've seen that in my own life, where it's like, you know, kind of that dangerous prayer of like, Lord, make it obvious, you know, and he's willing to, you know, and like, and that's really cool. And so for either of you, like for, you know, people, you know, either like for you, people that are going one way, but it's feeling very empty, like, would you have something that you would encourage people with in like finding Jesus? Because pursuing psychology is awesome, you know. That wasn't the problem, right? But like, in your own life, in your own experiences, would you have advice for people in like how to, you know, put their vision, you know, their vision for their life into God's hands, you know, and let him, because now you're doing these amazing things and you're actually fulfilled in it, you know, but it didn't feel like that would be the case, you know, years ago when you were having a hard time trusting him. Right. So what would be something you would advise people on in that, you know, in getting to that place of being able to let go and surrender? Yeah.
I think it's like a step-by-step process, if you will, right? Because I guess in the past I always thought, oh, it's got to be like one prayer and magically overnight I can just trust Jesus, right?
Yeah.
And then in my own experience, especially since coming here, I realized it's really like, oh, today I'm going to, I have a choice in front of me. I can choose to trust him or not trust him.
Right.
And I'm going to take this little choice here. And then, I can trust this leader that Jesus placed in my life.
Yeah.
Do I trust this leader or do I not trust this leader?
Yeah.
So it was actually an accumulation of all these little choices that then led, like, in a way, like, and then I look back, it's like, wow, I'm actually trusting him with so much in my life now.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I've had that history of trust built with him over time and over what seems to be little decisions.
Yeah.
So then I just say, like, just ask Jesus, and seek him in the small things.
Yeah.
And then start building that history of trust with him.
Yeah.
And then at least I know for myself, when I realize, wow, he's faithful here, he's faithful there, maybe I can trust him with the next bigger thing on my list. And then that led me to deciding I do want to trust him with my future. Yeah. And here I am realizing, well, he is for sure faithful because, my life is so fulfilled right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. It's the little choices, day-to-day choices, right? Maria, would you have anything like along that line of like when you're in a place of having a hard time letting go of your own, and trusting Jesus with your plans and with your vision, with your life, Any practical steps?
I would suggest that you don't discount the things that he's placed inside of you. Yeah. Because we're each unique in the sense of we're made to be parts of the same body that function together. Yeah. We're not actually meant to be each other. Right. And so I think we can have a habit of looking at somebody else's gifts, talents, and abilities, or what their calling is on their life and want that when it's not ours. Yeah. And so it makes us feel disgruntled or unable to do or be the person that God has called us to be. Yeah. And I think in that it's the love what he's placed inside of you. Yeah. And because there was a season where I thought, oh, I need to just not want anything so that then I can truly know what God wants. Wow. And it was realizing that the reason I may want those things, in that want to be in the center of his will and do what God has, was he had placed those things inside of me. Right. And here I was trying to reject them because, I can't want anything. Yeah. And it was embracing then, okay, do you want to use this part of who you've made me to be and loving that instead of despising it? I mean, one of the unsung heroes of any ministry organization is the gift of administration. Yeah. I think we both can attest to that. And it's not a very glorious one, but it's one that is highly needed. And it's, if you have a gifting in that, don't reject it, but go, okay, how do you want to use this, God? Yeah. And so it's never is just what you think, because he's on this calling you further in, and not letting fear dictate your choices would be another big suggestion of knowing that he is faithful and that he's bigger than you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that. That is so inspiring of because it's so easy, especially in or anywhere, to just compare yourself oh, I can be used if I'm like that, or I'll be worth it, worth more if I could do that, but that's you're just called to use what he's given you, and so I feel like both of your stories, and we touched on both of them a little bit, and they're both very inspiring, just that call to make the next right choice, take the next step, because he is trustworthy, and he's proven that in both of your lives, and where it's of course that's the most fulfilling thing, and when you're not quite there, it can feel scary, but I feel like both of your testimonies are proof that it's actually really exciting. It's actually better than you think.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so cool. So I thank you guys so much for sharing, for being on our podcast, and thank you everyone for listening. If you have any questions, please reach out, visit our website, visit us. That'd be awesome. Thank you so much. See you next time. Thank you so much for joining us at Refuse Ordinary. I hope that it was both challenging and inspiring in your walk with Jesus. If you have any questions at all, please comment below. We would love to hear from you. I have 3 different ways in which you can get involved at the School of Transformation. First, we have our flagship full-time in-person school right here in beautiful Oroville, California. Next, I have School of Transformation Light, which offers part-time modules, in-person and online on Sunday mornings. Last but not least, I have School of Transformation Light on the Move, which distills all the topics and teachings of the school into a video series, which means that you can watch it wherever you are. If you have any questions or would like more information on any of these options for school, please head to transformationschool.org.